I've really been looking forward to getting one of these since they were announced by Bachmann. It's something just that little bit different. Hi there everyone, welcome along to another video here with me, Jenny Kirk. I hope I find you well on this great day, and today I'd just like to say this video comes in association with our sponsor, Train-O-Matic, makers of DCC decoders to fit any and every locomotive. So if you want to check them out, check out the link down below and we'll be telling you a little bit more about them later on. But this particular model, it's something actually I've had my eye on for quite some time. It's coming from Bachmann, and I know we don't tend to review a huge amount of Bachmann models at the moment, and it's probably testament to just how good the ranges are across so many different manufacturers. But this, I've been really watching since it was announced, and I finally managed to get my hands on one. And it's the twin Network Southeast brake van set. So without further ado, come with me. I'll show you around. So here's the item. I've really been looking forward to getting one of these since they were announced by Bachmann. It's something just that little bit different, and I make no surprises of the fact that I actually really love brake vans, so it's nice to see them in some really unusual liveries. In the BR period later on, they did get a lot of interesting colour schemes, and these particular ones really do stand out and are eye-catching. On the end of the box, we've got the catalogue number 38-990, and as you see there, set of 20-ton and SR Pillbox brake vans, BR Network Southeast. And what really makes this special for me is the fact that it's two completely different types of brake vans for that extra visual appearance. Even though they're in roughly the same livery, and it's such a nice package, and I do like that. They could have easily put two of the same type of brake van in, which would have probably been a lot easier for production, but they've chosen to go with the Southern Pillbox brake van and the slightly later BR Standard, so it's really nicely presented in this coach-sized box. So I'm just going to slide this out. I just discard the box down there, and it comes in its custom plastic insert. The two brake vans are in there, just don't want them to roll off. And also, one of the things that I should show you in here as well is it does come with the detailing pack for the brake rigging, and that is specifically for the Southern style Pillbox brake, and you can fit them in there on the underside. Just to add to this, you can see some of the holes in the base, just there and there, for fitting some of this extra detail. But in all honesty with you, I've got a number of these Southern Pillbox brake vans from Bachmann, and I don't tend to go to the trouble of fitting these quite fiddly brake details, but they are there if you really want to add them in. So once you get them out of the packaging, they actually look even better. This blue is very eye-catching, and it has to be said, whilst my favourite colour is green, my second favourite colour is blue, and they come quite close together. So these represent brake vans that were in use pretty much towards the twilight of their lives. Late 80s into the early 1990s, I would guess, and it wouldn't surprise me if at least one, if not both of these brake vans made it into preservation. Such was the lateness with which they would have eventually been withdrawn. They're represented here in the Network Southeast colours, and it's quite unusual for something other than multiple units, locomotives and coaching stock to make it into this livery, but I believe that these may well have been used as coupling translators for moving EMU stock between works, so they would have probably been around in pairs. And it's just really nice to see Bachmann putting together this pack with the pair of them so that you can add this to your Network Southeast fleet. Now, I don't model Network Southeast, but I do like some of the colour schemes. So for me, I'm just rule one. My excuse is they've wandered a bit. Maybe somebody misappropriated them and they ended up on Weir Yard. Whatever the reason, they're going to take pride of place. Now, it's interesting that Bachmann have in the past released brake vans in the Network Southeast colours, and I do actually have one, the Queen Mary brake van, and I compared it to these wagons, and actually it's surprising. Both these wagons match each other, but they don't match the Queen Mary brake van, which does appear to be a slightly darker shade of blue. That said, there would be some degree of variance in real life, so I'm going to let that one slide. I'm going to start with the Pillbox brake van first, and you can see it's the pretty standard brake van that came out a couple of years ago now from Bachmann, and I really love this. They have a number of different variations, so you can see this as representing a brake van later in its life is bereft of the sanding boxes that if you get this in the Southern Railway brown livery representing it in its very early years, they do have those on. The actual cabin is finished in the Network Southeast blue, and then we've also got this Cantrail stripe all the way round, really nicely picked out on the end barge boards of the roof. And there's no real bleed over, it is really quite sharply finished on there. The separately applied lamp handles are on there, really nice. They are a little bit over scale, but unless they were made of metal, it just wouldn't be possible to make them scale thickness. And deep down, I feel that the wagon is better to have them, even if they're a little bit over scale, than to not have them at all. Other features on this van are the separately applied handrails, and they are really nicely done. We've also got the, well, I'm guessing it's the air pipe, but it's a little bit difficult because this wagon isn't tops coded on the side to ascertain whether it's air piped or vacuum piped, or indeed both. But I suspect it's air piped to match with the EMUs that would likely have been acting as a coupling translator for. So that would be what this little pipe down the side that goes underneath would be about. It has the same on both sides, and actually when I've been in a real guard's van, the whole point of this is that inside the van there's a valve that the guard can use to break the vacuum or the open the air line to be able to apply the brakes, even though the van itself only effectively has a handbrake. The rest of the model is up to Bachmann's usual very high standards. The tempo printing on this, well, there's a lot of it, and it is all sharply done. We've got the Network Southeast 3-colour stripe crest, and that is nicely done on the ducats there. We've got the overhead warning flash, and the only detraction from that is it does seem to have just suffered a little bit where it passes across the planking. The return to Old Oak Common is on there, sharp, it's clear, and the lettering lines up with the plank really nicely, so there's no real problems with the tempo printing and legibility on that one. On the side of the ducat as well, we have the actual number of the wagon and some other details about it too, all perfectly legible. Down here on the sole bar, max speed 50 mph, that is nice and clear and sharp, and we've also got the Lansing Works plate at the end, all nicely tempo printed. One of the things I like about this van is the rivet detail down in this pretty hefty sole bar, and the works plate that actually looks like it could have been separately applied. It's not, but the finish is good enough that it may as well have been. We've got separately applied footboards on the sides here, and then we've got pretty nice W-irons and brake blocks that do line up with the treads of the wheel. On the underside, the braking detail is all factory applied. It's made of a pretty springy plastic, so it does stand up to a few knocks and bumps. The couplings, slimline tension locks in a NEM pocket that is pretty unobtrusive where it mounts between the wheels. So if you decide that you want to use something else and don't need to use the NEM pockets at all, you can slide these out, and actually that mounting block isn't obtrusive at all. It doesn't need to be cut off because it's kind of hidden within the footprint of the wheels. The buffers aren't sprung, they're kind of these sort of chunky fat type buffers, and they do look quite nice, and they contrast quite nicely to the different type of buffers that you see here on the other brake van, which we're going to move to now. I just want to take a moment out to talk to you about today's sponsor, Train-O-Matic. They make DCC decoders to fit any locomotive from any manufacturer. They're made by hobbyists for hobbyists, with the intention being that they are so easy to use. Just drop them in and go. There's very little need to mess about with CV settings. These things just do what they say on the tin and work straight out of the box, and I can well recommend them. Visit trainomatic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. And now, back to the review. This van is the later BR standard van, which in turn owes its origin to the earlier London and North Eastern Railway standard van. It's, again, really nicely done. The moulding for this is slightly older than the Pillbox brake van, but nonetheless, this really is a good wagon. Now, I know another manufacturer has brought out a much more highly detailed wagon, but even when you put them side by side, this version does still hold its own. We've got separately applied handrails here, and on the wagon as well, made from a pretty springy plastic, so it does stand up to a few knocks and bumps without them snapping off, and that is actually quite important. There's nothing worse than coming to a van or a wagon and finding that these handrails just snap off and disappear, so it's good to see that there's some really careful thought to the use of materials in its construction. Again, we have that pretty sharp tempo printing, but one area where this van has suffered a little bit over the Pillbox is because the planking is vertical instead of horizontal. That return to old oak common just looks that little bit messier because that lettering is going over the planking, and it just doesn't quite look as good as perhaps it could have done. Again, the same problem is beset of the data panel down here, but of course the real wagons would have had a similar issue, but the actual planking is slightly overscale on these just to make it stand out in 00 to scrutiny under the human eye. So it's one of those things, there's always going to be compromise in model form. The sole bars are great on this, there is so much detail in there, and actually compared to the Pillbox brake van, which had quite a flat sole bar, there's an awful lot of gussets and details, and the rivet lines do mount up where they should with the rest of the structure. This wagon, engineering wise, does make sense, and it's nice to see. Again, the brake blocks line up with the wheels, and it's much simpler underneath. There's no representation whatsoever of the handbrake, but it isn't really a detraction. We've got these footboards that run the full length of the wagon, and they are actually pretty finely moulded, and again in that springy plastic that does stand up to a few knocks and bumps. Couplings, again in the slimline tension locks, in the mounting point, which is very thoughtfully mounted between the wheels, so if you don't need those couplings, you don't have to worry about that mounting block. The rest of the livery application is pretty sharp. The cantrail stripes are a little bit thicker on this. I guess that follows prototype. They were the full thickness of these barge boards, so it follows that in model form. The torpedo vents on the roof are nicely done. We've got the stovepipe representation and these little rain strips as well. It's all nicely done, and I guess replicated with the Pillbox as well. The colour of the roof is much darker than a lot of the other brake vans that we've had from Bachmann, but again this is prototypical, and I quite like these with a very dark roof. They do actually suit it, unlike some of the colours that some of these more esoteric brake van liveries have come in. These really do in every way look the part. So in terms of scoring, in terms of finish, well, the Pillbox brake van I felt had a slightly higher level of finish, but overall the package is good. It's beset by a couple of small minor detractions, but they weren't deal breakers for me, so I'm going to give this 8.9 out of 10. In terms of functionality, well, pretty much everything is there. The only little thing that I can find is that it's clear that the older BR standard van is a little bit less developed by nature of the fact that it's an older tooling and there's no representation of the handbrake gear underneath. Again, it's not a deal breaker for me. And so for functionality, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Ease of use, well, I suppose that doesn't really apply to rolling stock quite so much, but it's got the couplings, they work, these things couple up. The brake shoes line up with the wheels, so if you want to replace for EM or P4, I guess they'd work, but you might need to do a little bit of pushing and shoving to get them in. So I'd guess, maybe a 9 out of 10 for that. In terms of aesthetics, well, the overall package is really good for me. Just that vertical planking on the BR standard. So for aesthetics, I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10. In terms of value for money, well, these are on sale at the moment at Rails of Sheffield for £36 for a set. When they were at their original asking price, I really did think that they were a little bit on the expensive side, because you were paying an awful lot for what were effectively brake vans that the tooling costs should have been amortised by now, and certainly the BR standard brake van was from an era where we were regularly getting these for well below £10, and it does feel like it had become a very expensive model for what it was. At £36, it brought it into my price bracket, but that's a sale price, so I'm going to say for value for money, 7.5 out of 10. So an overall score for this set, I'm going to give it 43.9 out of 50. It does offer a pretty good set for those of you who want to model the twilight years of British Rail, and something a little bit different. Certainly if you model Network South East DMUs, EMUs and locomotive stock, then these are a must for on your layout, just to give you something a little bit different that fits with the corporate image of Network South East. So if you run DMUs, EMUs, locomotives and coaching stock in Network South East livery, these are a must for your layout to give you something just a little bit different. Whether these are parked at the end of a siding in a depot, or indeed in use on the main line as braking translators for EMU stock, they really do add something else to that model. Or, if you're like me, somebody who just likes to collect brake vans in interesting liveries, and there are a lot of us about, then this set is certainly a must. I hope that video has been really informative to you. Don't forget to like this video and share it too, and also subscribe to the channel. You'll be the first to know about new videos as and when they go up. And we've also put in, for your convenience, a link down below that takes you to the Rails of Sheffield website, where you can pick up your own one of these models if you really do like the look of what we've reviewed. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take really good care, and I hope to see you back here again. Bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit trainomatic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, but a special thanks go out to Anthony Kidson, Michael Churchwood, Alec Ralph, Anthony Hunt, William Wade, Wayne Johns, Offshore Allen, oorail.co.uk, Tepic, Michael Lockie, and Helen Sink. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.